The Zarkonian Empire had never known defeat. For centuries, their armadas had crushed world after world, turning planets into smoldering husks and civilizations into whispered legends of the past. Now they had arrived at the last defiant ember in their path, Earth. 10,000 warships darkened the void of space, a massive blockade stretching across the planet's orbit. Every vessel bristled with weapons, their targeting systems locked onto the helpless world below. General Kovazul watched from the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion's Wrath, his four crimson eyes narrowing with disdain. The humans had been given their ultimatum: surrender within 24 hours or face total annihilation. He expected the usual response: desperation, pleas for mercy or foolish resistance that would lead to their swift destruction. But so far, Earth had been silent. It irritated him. "Commander Zathrak," he growled, turning toward his second-in-command. "Have the humans responded?" The reptilian officer bowed his head slightly. "No, General. We have intercepted internal communications, but there is no sign of surrender preparations. If anything, they appear disturbingly calm." Kovazul's mandibles twitched in annoyance. Did they think they could win? Did they not understand the sheer scale of the force assembled against them? 10,000 ships, each capable of reducing continents to ash, stood ready to strike at his command. There was no conceivable way a single planet could resist such overwhelming firepower. "Then let us remind them of their place," Kovazul said coldly. "Target their largest cities. Prepare for orbital bombardment." Just as his officers moved to execute his order, a new signal appeared on the fleet's sensors. It was small, insignificant compared to the warships surrounding Earth. A single blip moving toward them from the planet's surface. "What is that?" Kovazul demanded. "A human vessel," one of the sensor officers reported. "It's unarmed. No fleet support. No escorts. Just one ship." The bridge fell into silence as the officers processed this information. Kovazul's rage flared. A single ship? This was not defiance. It was mockery. Did the humans truly think they could intimidate the Zarkonian Empire with a lone vessel? "Identify it," he snapped. "Running scans now." "Strange. It's not in our records," the officer said, frowning. "It has no standard energy signature, no known class designation." Kovazul leaned forward, his claws gripping the armrests of his command chair. The ship looked different, unlike anything the humans had fielded before. Its sleek, dark frame seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. There were no visible weapon ports, no external thrusters, nothing that indicated a traditional warship, and yet it moved with unsettling precision, gliding through space as if unaffected by inertia. "Patch me through to their communications," the general ordered. A moment later, the bridge's main display flickered to life, revealing a darkened cockpit. The figure inside was humanoid, but their face was obscured by a sleek black helmet. A voice, synthetic yet unmistakably human, came through the speakers. "This is the Revenant," the voice stated. "Leave now, or you will not leave at all." Kovazul let out a sharp, barking laugh. He had encountered defiance before, but this was beyond foolish. "You dare threaten the might of the Zarkonian Empire with a single ship?" There was no response. The figure simply stared back, silent and unmoving. Kovazul sneered. "Very well. Destroy them." The order was met with immediate action. Hundreds of warships locked onto the Revenant, unleashing a storm of plasma, railgun fire, and missile barrages. The void of space erupted into fire as the Zarkonian fleet opened fire in unison, their combined firepower capable of wiping entire nations from existence. And yet, nothing hit. The Revenant moved like a phantom, weaving effortlessly through the barrage, dodging with impossible speed. It did not have shields, yet every shot aimed at it seemed to bend away at the last second. Some energy blasts even looped back toward the Zarkonian fleet, colliding with their own ships. The bridge of the Dominion's Wrath fell into stunned silence. What just happened?" Zathrak whispered. Kovazol's claws dug into the armrests, his mind struggling to make sense of what he had just witnessed. That was not possible. No ship, no technology, could move like that. The Revenant stopped just outside the heart of the fleet, completely unarmed. Then, without warning, it released a pulse of energy, silent, almost imperceptible. For a moment, nothing happened. Then chaos erupted. Across the fleet, ships began to flicker out of existence, hundreds at first, then thousands. The vast armada that had once stood unchallenged in the darkness of space now found itself vanishing into nothingness. There was no explosion, no wreckage left behind. Just empty space where warships had once been. Panic spread through the remaining Zarkonian forces. We're losing ships. They're just disappearing. One officer cried out in horror. Scanners show no destruction, no survivors. They're just gone. Kovazol rose to his feet, his heart pounding against his armored chest. This was beyond warfare. This was beyond technology. This was something else entirely. The Revenant remained motionless in the void, the lone figure inside watching. Finally, the voice returned over the comms. You were warned. And with that, the transmission ended. Kovazol could only stare at the screens as his mighty fleet, his invincible, unstoppable fleet, continued to fade into the abyss. 10,000 ships had come for war, but humanity had answered with only one. 2 seconds. The bridge of the Dominion's wrath was deathly silent. General Kovazol stood frozen, his 4 crimson eyes wide with disbelief. This was impossible. His fleet, the greatest armada the Zarkonian Empire had ever assembled, was vanishing before his eyes. No weapons, no explosions, no wreckage. Just gone. A fleet of 10,000 warships, reduced to less than half in mere minutes. General, Zathrak stammered, his scales pale with fear. We have to retreat. This isn't a battle. This is something else. Retreat. The very thought made Kovazol's mandibles clench in rage. The Zarkonian Empire did not retreat. They conquered. They destroyed. They crushed all who opposed them. And yet, the cold grip of something unfamiliar wrapped around his chest. Fear. The Revenant remained still in the void, as if it had all the time in the universe. No movement. No weapons fired. And yet every ship that targeted it had vanished into nothingness. Kovazol forced himself to breathe, to focus. He was a general of the Empire. He would not be cowed by tricks. Send out the dreadnoughts, he ordered, his voice like steel. But sir, do it. The 3 remaining dreadnoughts moved into formation. These were the pride of the fleet, massive warships that could withstand planetary bombardments. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy an entire world. Their energy cores glowed with the raw power of a dying star, their cannons larger than cities. Fire everything. The dreadnoughts obeyed. 1,000 energy lances, nuclear warheads, and antimatter torpedoes screamed toward the Revenant, enough firepower to turn a moon into dust. The void itself seemed to shake with the force of the assault. For a moment, it seemed like they had done it. The explosion was blinding, consuming the Revenant in a brilliant white inferno. The Zarkonian officers watched with tense anticipation. But then, the flames flickered, vanished, and the Revenant was still there. Untouched, unharmed. Gasps filled the bridge. Some officers stumbled backward, their claws shaking. Others whispered prayers to their gods. Kovazol's blood ran cold. The voice returned over the comms. Calm. Unmoved. Is this all you have? The dreadnoughts didn't get a chance to answer. In the blink of an eye, the Revenant moved. No thrusters, no propulsion. It simply appeared in front of the first dreadnought. Then the second. Then the third. A shadow passing through the void like a ghost. The first dreadnought shuddered. Its hull, forged from the densest alloys in the galaxy, began to crack like fragile glass. A deep, agonizing groan echoed through the comms. The ship's energy core flickered, then imploded, vanishing into a silent abyss. The second dreadnought followed, then the third. One by one, the greatest warships of the Zarkonian fleet disappeared, erased from existence as if they had never been there at all. A deep silence settled over what remained of the fleet. The officers of the Dominion's Wrath were motionless, their eyes locked on the Revenant. The lone ship turned, facing the flagship directly. Kovazol's breathing was ragged. He had fought in countless wars, had led invasions across entire star systems, but never had he encountered something like this. The voice spoke again. "This is your final warning." Something in that voice, calm, absolute, merciless, made the Zarkonian general's resolve waver. For the first time in his life, he truly understood what it meant to be prey. Zathrak turned to him, his face pale. "General, what do we do?" Kovazol clenched his fists. His pride screamed at him to fight, to die with honor. But honor meant nothing to the dead. His fleet was broken. His enemy was something beyond comprehension. There was only one choice. "Fall back," he said, his voice hollow. A whisper ran through the bridge. No one had expected to hear those words from their general. "General," Zathrak asked, as if he hadn't heard correctly. "I said fall back." Kovazol roared, "Order the remaining ships to retreat." Now, across the battlefield, the shattered remains of the Zarkonian fleet turned away from Earth, their engines burning as they fled. The Revenant did not pursue. It simply hovered in the void, watching, waiting. As the Dominion's Wrath turned, Kovazol cast one last glance at the planet below. They had come expecting conquest. Instead, they had found something far worse. And deep in his bones, General Kovazol knew the truth. The Zarkonian Empire had just made an enemy it would never understand. The silence aboard the Dominion's Wrath was suffocating. The mighty Zarkonian fleet, once 10,000 strong, had been reduced to fleeing wreckage. Even as the great warship turned away from Earth, General Kovazol could feel the weight of every eye on him. He had given the order to retreat, a command he had never imagined he would utter. But there had been no choice. The Revenant still hovered in the void, motionless yet impossibly imposing. It had not pursued them, nor had it spoken since issuing its final warning. It simply watched. "Hyperdrives are engaging," Zathrak reported, his voice tense. "We'll be clear in 90 seconds. 90 seconds. For a warrior race like the Zarkonians, that should have felt like nothing. And yet, every passing moment stretched into eternity. The crew's hands trembled over their controls. No one dared to speak of it, but the fear was there, thick in the air like smoke. Kovazol's claws dug into the armrests of his command throne. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what had happened. How had the humans created such a weapon? The Revenant did not move like a ship. It moved like a force of nature. It had no visible weapons, yet entire dreadnoughts had simply ceased to exist in its presence. This was not technology. This was something else. The timer counted down, 70 seconds. Then, without warning, alarms blared across the bridge. "Proximity alert," one of the officers shouted. "Impossible," Zathrak snapped. "There's nothing out there." But the sensors told a different story. Something was there, right in front of them. The Revenant. It hadn't moved. There was no record of acceleration, no hyperspace jump. It had simply appeared directly in the path of their retreat. The bridge fell into chaos. Emergency thrusters, recalculating hyperspace trajectory, shields to maximum. None of it mattered. The Revenant remained where it was, its dark frame swallowing the starlight around it. It did not fire. It did not threaten. It only waited. Kovazol's mandibles clenched. They were being tested. Slowly, he stood, his imposing figure casting a shadow over his terrified officers. "Open a channel," he ordered. Zathrak hesitated. "Sir, we don't know." "I said open a channel." A tense pause. Then The screen flickered to life. The same darkened cockpit, the same faceless figure behind the sleek black helmet. Kovazul forced himself to meet that expressionless gaze. He had faced death 1,000 times, but this was different. This was an unknown. He took a deep breath. "You have made your point, human," he said, his voice steady. "Earth is yours. We will not return." A long silence. The figure did not react. Then, at last, the synthetic voice spoke. "Not good enough." Something inside Kovazul twisted. "What?" "You came with the intent to conquer, to burn, to destroy." The voice was calm, but beneath that calmness lurked something dangerous. "You do not get to leave without consequences." A cold dread crept into the general's bones. "You would challenge the might of the Zarkonian Empire?" he asked, trying to regain control of the conversation. "You think one ship can. You assume I am alone." For the first time, Kovazul felt something close to terror. Was there more? More of these things? The Revenant's pilot leaned forward slightly, and though their face remained hidden, Kovazul could feel their eyes on him. "This is not a war you can win, General," the voice continued. "Leave, but do not think the Empire is beyond our reach. The next time your people turn their gaze toward Earth, we will not wait." The screen went dark. Kovazul's heart pounded. His officers were silent, their expressions stricken. The implications were clear. This was not a simple defeat. This was a warning. A final one. "Engage the hyperdrive," Kovazul said quietly. Zathrak hesitated. "And if the Emperor demands we return?" Kovazul exhaled slowly. "Then the Emperor is a fool." With a final pulse of energy, the remnants of the Zarkonian fleet vanished into the void. And the Revenant watched them go. The stars stretched into long, thin lines as the remains of the Zarkonian fleet hurtled through hyperspace. The Dominion's wrath, once the proud spearhead of an unstoppable invasion, now limped home in disgrace. The bridge was eerily quiet. No war songs, no triumphant cries, only the hum of the engines and the hollow weight of defeat. General Kovazul sat in his command throne, staring blankly at the void ahead. His claws tapped against the armrest, a slow, deliberate rhythm. His mind raced, but no answers came. The battle should have been won before it even began. 10,000 warships against a single human vessel. It should have been a slaughter. And yet, they had lost. Worse, they had not even understood how they had lost. "Time until arrival?" he asked, his voice low. Zathrak, his second in command, hesitated before answering. "We will reach Zarkon Prime in 2 standard cycles." 2 cycles. 2 cycles before Kovazul would have to explain to the Emperor how the greatest fleet in the Empire's history had been shattered by a single human ship. The thought made his mandibles clench. A soft chime broke the silence. "Incoming transmission." Kovazul turned toward the officer at communications. "Who is it?" "Priority signal, from the Emperor's War Council." A cold weight settled in his stomach. Of course. They already knew. "Put it through." The screen flickered to life, revealing a massive, scaled figure seated upon a throne of black iron. Emperor Xalzor, ruler of the Zarkonian Empire, glared through the transmission with burning gold eyes. His presence filled the bridge, his very gaze a silent condemnation. "General Kovazul." The Emperor's voice was deep, measured, but there was no mistaking the barely contained rage beneath it. "Explain yourself." Kovazul stood, bringing his fist to his chest in salute. "My Emperor, I." "You led 10,000 warships into battle." Xalzor interrupted, his voice a growl. "You promised victory, and yet you returned to me with scraps." His golden eyes narrowed. "Where is your fleet, General?" Kovazul forced himself to stand tall. He would not cower. "Destroyed, my Emperor." Murmurs rippled through the War Council members behind the Emperor. Their disbelief was almost tangible. Zalzur's claws tightened around the arms of his throne. By whom? A single human vessel. The War Council erupted in shouts of outrage. Kuvazul could hear them demanding his execution, his disgrace, his removal from command. But the Emperor merely stared at him, his gaze unreadable. "Tell me," Zalzur said, his voice dangerously soft, "how does one ship destroy an armada?" Kuvazul exhaled slowly. "I do not know." Silence. Then the Emperor leaned forward. "You do not know." No weapons, no shields, no movement detected. Kuvazul continued, forcing himself to stay composed. "Our ships vanished upon contact with it. Even our dreadnoughts were erased in an instant." He hesitated, then added, "It was not technology as we understand it." One of the war counselors, a battle-hardened admiral, snarled, "You expect us to believe that sorcery destroyed our fleet?" Kuvazul turned to him sharply. "I expect you to believe the truth." Zalzur studied him for a long moment, then leaned back in his throne. "You said the humans issued a warning." "Yes." Kuvazul's jaw tightened. "They told us to leave, and if we returned, they would not wait." More murmurs from the War Council. One of the high generals scoffed. "Then we return with more ships, with more dreadnoughts. We will burn their pathetic world to ash." "No." The single word silenced the room. Zalzur's eyes narrowed. "You would refuse to fight, Kuvazul." "I would refuse to throw more lives into the abyss," the general said, his voice like steel. "We faced something beyond our understanding, something that did not fight us. It ended us. If we go back, we all die." A deep, dangerous silence filled the throne room. The Emperor's gaze burned into him, testing, measuring. Then, finally, Zalzur spoke. "This is unexpected." Kuvazul kept his expression unreadable. Zalzur exhaled slowly, then turned his gaze toward his counselors. "I will not waste the might of our empire on a war we do not understand." A stunned silence followed his words. The war counselors looked at one another in disbelief, but none dared to question him outright. Then the Emperor's gaze snapped back to Kuvazul. "You will not be executed." The general allowed himself a slow breath. "But," Zalzur continued, his voice sharp as a blade, "you will lead an intelligence division. We will uncover what the humans have created. And when we understand it, we will reclaim our honor." Kuvazul bowed his head. "As you command, my emperor." The transmission cut. For a long moment, the bridge remained silent. Then Zathrak stepped forward. "You convinced the emperor to spare you." Kuvazul let out a slow breath. "For now." Zathrak hesitated. "Do you think we will return to Earth one day?" The general looked out at the void, his crimson eyes narrowed. "I think we may not have a choice." The halls of the Zarkonian intelligence complex were colder than usual. General Kuvazul walked with measured steps, his claws clicking against the polished black floor. The weight of his failure still loomed over him, but he was no longer a disgraced commander. Now he had a mission, one that even the Emperor himself considered vital. Unravel the mystery of the Revenant. He stepped through the reinforced doors of the intelligence chamber, where his team had gathered. High-ranking officers, analysts, and scientists all turned to face him, some with doubt, others with curiosity. None dared speak until he did. "We have faced a force beyond our comprehension," he began, his voice steady. 10,000 of our greatest warships were destroyed without a single shot being fired. We cannot afford ignorance. His gaze swept over them. "You are here because you are the best the Empire has to offer. You will uncover the truth." Silence. Then one of the lead analysts, Vorthens, spoke. "Our data is incomplete." He hesitated, then continued. "We attempted to record the battle in real time, but our sensors registered nothing. Every time the Revenant engaged, our readings went dark." Kuvazul's mandibles tightened. He had suspected as much. No visual recordings. Vorthen's throat clicked. Nothing useful. The few images we recovered showed distortions, as if space itself was rejecting observation. The room remained tense. The Zarkonians were masters of war. They had conquered countless civilizations. And yet this was something new, something they did not understand. One of the younger scientists shifted uneasily. Could it be a trick? Some form of advanced stealth technology? No, Kovazol's voice left no room for debate. Stealth does not erase battleships from existence. This was not war as we know it. This was extermination. A grim silence followed. Then, another officer spoke up, a hardened veteran named Selkar. If technology cannot explain this, then what can? That was the question. Kovazol exhaled slowly. We must assume the humans have developed something beyond conventional science, a weapon unlike anything seen before. He looked around the room. We need every fragment of data, every historical record, anything that could provide a clue. Vorthen exchanged a glance with his team before pulling up a display. A star chart flickered into view, zooming in on a region of space near the Sol system. We do have one lead. Kovazol leaned in. Explain. Vorthen tapped the screen. Before the battle, our long-range probes detected an anomaly in this sector. A gravitational disturbance, small but unnatural. It originated from the Sol system, just days before the Revenant appeared. A ripple of tension spread through the room. Are you suggesting the humans activated something? Selkar asked. It is possible. Vorthen nodded. If the Revenant is connected to this anomaly, then it was not merely a warship, it was summoned. The very idea sent a chill through Kovazol. What do we know of human history? He asked. Have they ever possessed anything like this before? Another analyst, a historian named Morkel, hesitated before answering. Human records are difficult to interpret. Much of their early history is filled with myths and legends. Kovazol's eyes narrowed. Explain. Morkel pulled up a series of human documents. They speak often of warriors beyond death, of soldiers who return from the void, of ships that sail the stars without engines. He looked at the general. Before humanity reached the stars, they told stories of ghosts. The room fell into an eerie silence. Ghosts, Selkar muttered, shaking his head. You think we lost to a spirit. I do not know what we lost to, Morkel admitted, but whatever the Revenant is, it was not built by human hands alone. Their own records warn of such things. He tapped the screen, revealing an ancient human phrase, translated into Zarkonian. Do not disturb the sleepers. Kovazol studied the words, unease creeping into his mind. This anomaly, he said at last, is it still active? Vorthen checked his instruments. No. Whatever happened, it ended the moment we engaged the Revenant. Kovazol's mandibles twitched in frustration. They had lost their only lead. Unless. His eyes narrowed. Then we will not study the humans from a distance. He turned to the room. We need more information. And we need it from the source. Selkar frowned. You mean? Yes, Kovazol confirmed. We go to Earth. The room tensed. The idea of returning so soon after their humiliating defeat was unthinkable. But Kovazol did not care. The Emperor wanted answers. And he would find them, no matter the cost. The Zarkonian infiltration vessel Void Strider drifted at the edge of the Sol system, its hull coated in adaptive stealth plating that rendered it invisible to most known forms of detection. General Kovazol stood on the command deck, arms folded, as the planet Earth loomed in the distance. They had spent weeks analyzing every fragment of data, tracing human myths, searching for an answer that made sense. But there was no logical explanation. The Revenant was an enigma, an entity that had wiped out an entire armada without firing a single shot. And now, they were here. Orbit achieved, the pilot announced. Passive scans engage. Kovazol's second-in-command, Selkar, stood beside him, staring at the blue-green world. Do you think they know we're here? Kovazol considered the question. If the humans had technology advanced enough to erase warships, what were the chances they could detect a cloaked vessel? Assume they do, he said at last. But if they haven't acted yet, they are either unaware or unconcerned. The bridge remained tense. Vorthen, the intelligence officer, spoke next. Our primary objective is to investigate the anomaly's origin. The disturbance was brief but precise, located near one of their planetary research stations. He tapped a display, highlighting a remote facility near the Arctic. This is where we begin. Kovazol nodded. Deploy the infiltration team. Minutes later, a sleek drop pod detached from the Void Strider, slipping silently into Earth's atmosphere. Inside, a squad of elite Zarkonian operatives sat in silence, their black armor blending into the darkness. They were the best infiltrators the Empire had, trained to move undetected even in hostile environments. As the pod touched down on the frozen tundra, its hull hissed as it cooled to match the surrounding temperature. The hatch slid open, and the operatives moved swiftly, fanning out toward the research facility. The complex was quiet. Too quiet. No guards, one of the operatives whispered. No security drones. Kovazol's voice crackled through their communicators. Proceed with caution. The squad entered the facility, weapons ready. The halls were dimly lit, the air unnaturally cold. Consoles flickered weakly, and half the screens displayed static. It looked abandoned. Then they found the bodies. Human researchers, frozen in place. Expressions of horror etched onto their faces. Some had collapsed mid-stride, as if death had taken them in an instant. What is this? Selkar muttered. Vorthen knelt beside one of the corpses, scanning it with his analysis tool. No wounds, no external damage. He frowned. But their neural activity. It's as if something ripped their minds away. A chill ran through Kovazol. The operatives pressed forward, deeper into the facility, until they reached the central chamber. There, in the middle of the room, stood a massive containment structure, its surface covered in strange, shifting symbols. It pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. This must be it, one of the operatives said. As they approached, the structure spoke. A voice, ancient and hollow, echoed through the room. Not in words, but in raw meaning, a presence that burrowed into their very minds. You should not have come. The lights flickered. The walls groaned. The air itself twisted. And then the screaming began. The Zarkonian operatives collapsed, clutching their heads, their bodies convulsing as something unseen tore into them. Kovazol's heart pounded. Abort mission, he barked. Get out of there, now. The surviving operatives staggered backward, tracking their fallen comrades, but the containment structure shuddered, and the entire facility trembled. The walls cracked, the floor split, and then, for the first time in centuries, the structure opened. From within the darkness, two glowing eyes ignited. Something awoke, and the last thing the Zarkonians heard was a whisper, soft, cold, and final. We warned you. The Void Strider was gone. One moment, the cloaked Zarkonian vessel had been waiting in Earth's orbit, its crew monitoring the infiltration team's progress. The next, it had vanished, without a distress call, without an explosion, without a trace. General Kovazol stood on the bridge of a backup Zarkonian command ship, his claws digging into the metal railing as he replayed the final transmission from the Void Strider. It was only 5 seconds long. Screams, static, and then silence. He felt something he had not experienced in decades. Fear. This is impossible, Selkar muttered, standing beside him. A ship doesn't just disappear. Vorthen, pale and shaken, stared at the data stream. General, I analyzed the signal. It wasn't just cut off. It was consumed. Every trace of it was erased. It's as if the ship was never there. Kovazol exhaled slowly, controlling his rage. Do we have any survivors from the infiltration team? Vorthen hesitated. 1. A low growl rumbled in Kovazol's chest. Bring them to me. Now. Minutes later, the doors hissed open, and 2 guards dragged in a trembling Zarkonian operative. His armor was battered, his mandibles twitching, his eyes unfocused. He looked like a soldier who had seen something no mind was meant to comprehend. Kovazol stepped forward, looming over the operative. "Tell me what happened." The operative flinched but forced himself to speak. "We entered the human facility. The researchers were dead before we arrived. Something inside was waiting for us." His breath came in ragged gasps. "We thought it was technology, a weapon, but it wasn't." Selkar narrowed his eyes. "Then what was it?" The operative's claws dug into his own arms, a presence. It spoke to us without words. It touched our minds. He shuddered violently. I felt nothingness, as if I was being erased from existence. Kovazol's mandibles tightened. "And the Revenant?" The operative swallowed hard. "I don't think it's a ship." He looked up, his expression hollow. "I think it's a being." Silence hung over the room like a noose. "A being?" Vorthan echoed. "That's impossible." The operative let out a broken laugh. "Impossible. We lost 10,000 warships without a single shot being fired. Nothing is impossible anymore." Kovazol felt a slow, terrible realization settling in his chest. They had believed they were studying a technological marvel, a human superweapon. But what if they were wrong? What if the Revenant wasn't something humans built, but something they awoke? What happened after the structure opened? Selkar asked. The operative's eyes darkened. It looked at us. Vorthan frowned. "What do you mean?" The soldier trembled. "I mean it wasn't just aware of us. It saw us. It understood us." He shook his head. That was the moment the others started screaming. It wasn't attacking us. It was just there. Selkar sneered. "And that was enough to kill them." The operative let out a breathless whisper. "Yes." Kovazol turned away, staring out at the void of space. This was worse than he had feared. "We have to inform the Emperor," Vorthan said quietly. Kovazol didn't respond at first. He stared at the stars, feeling an unfamiliar weight settle in his chest. The Zarkonian Empire had ruled for centuries. They had crushed countless civilizations, broken fleets, conquered entire species. But now, for the first time, they were the prey. He turned back to his officers. "No." Selkar frowned. "No." Kovazol's voice was grim. "If we tell the Emperor we lost an entire fleet to a being we don't understand, he will demand war. He will send more fleets." He looked around the room, meeting their gazes one by one. "And they will all be erased." The others shifted uncomfortably. Even Selkar, a warrior with little patience for fear, seemed disturbed by the idea. "Then what do we do?" Vorthan asked. Kovazol inhaled sharply. "We leave." Selkar's eyes widened. "You're suggesting retreat." "I am suggesting survival," Kovazol corrected. "We erase all records of this mission. We delete every mention of the Revenant. As far as the Empire is concerned, the battle never happened. Our fleet was lost in an accident. A disaster. Anything but the truth." He turned to the shaken operative. "You will say nothing." The soldier hesitated, then nodded. He had seen what lay beyond the containment structure. He did not need convincing. Kovazol took one last look at Earth, that cursed world, before giving the order. "All ships, prepare for hyperspace jump. We are leaving this system." The command deck remained tense as the countdown began. Selkar clenched his fists. "If we run today, we admit that there is something out there stronger than us." Kovazol did not look at him. "There is something stronger than us." The stars outside the viewport stretched as the ship jumped into hyperspace, leaving Earth far behind. But even as they fled, Kovazol knew one thing for certain. The Revenant was still watching. And if the Zarkonians ever returned, it would be waiting.